Day 742 of the Ukrainian War Map, also known as the Russo-Ukrainian War. Juzzy here, and today is another update as I take a simplified and down-to-earth approach to some of the most important happenings on the ground in Ukraine. So, starting off, we'll take a look at the Russian losses, as currently Russia sits on more than 421,000 military personnel losses, which represents an additional 1,160 in the past 24 hours. Then as for hardware losses, quite a big day. So 17 tanks, 51 APVs, and 42 artillery. And with over 1,000 kilometers of front lines, well, 42 artillery actually isn't that much. And you know what else isn't that much? The state of Russian Soviet stockpiles, like this one in Omsk of Russia, all since cleared out of artillery SPGs. And this is just one of many Soviet fields we've seen cleared out, as per a multitude of satellite images over a long period of time. So here we see just decades of Cold War era hardware just dissolving away. And with current Russian production levels, as a conservative estimate, they would need decades upon decades to replenish these old stocks. Then headed across to the map today, and we'll quickly start out in Russia as 3 Russian oil tanks were engulfed in flames in Belgorod at an oil depot after a Ukrainian drone strike. Then following that, Russian media reported a drone attack on a mining and processing plant in Zalezhgorsk of Kursk, causing fuel tanks to catch fire. But then also there was an explosion occurring near an oil storage facility near to Voronezh. No civilian objects were damaged, and this information was all as per the press service of the regional government. So I must say, how unfortunate that so many of the Russian industrial centers, where the climate and infrastructure is best, are within drone striking distance from Ukraine. And of course are very flammable targets with not enough air defenses to protect them. Luckily, Russia has a broad portfolio of high-quality industrial products that are in high demand for export around the globe, so that they don't entirely depend on their resource exports for their economy. Of course, I'm kidding on that last statement. Then into the Ukrainian map today, as Ukraine's strategic defense maintains a strong position on multiple axes of attack on the Avdiivka front, at the locations of Berdyansk, Tonenka, and Pervomayska. As Ukrainian forces really seem to have entrenched, establishing a fairly robust defense line against all odds and Russian incursions, with the exception of Orlivka's southwest, if we are to zoom in there. Then, in an unexpected event, Russian forces were forced to be pulled back or pushed back at north of Marinka. And I'll zoom in there for that one as well and pull out the date map, and you'll be able to see the difference there. So there it was, and there it goes. Then headed just south of here to Novomykhailivka. While an immediate Russian attack was thwarted, concerns arise as Russian forces position themselves closer to the settlement, hinting at potential intensified assaults in the coming days and weeks, especially with the mud Rasputitsa season on the horizon, and their wishes to consolidate any gains as soon as possible. But then, in the mix of things, we saw the loss of a Russian T-62 with a KMT-6 mine plow. Looks like they found themselves a mine plow in storage. This is genuinely quite rare. But they also deployed a brand spanking new, 70 years young T-54 main battle tank, which was subsequently destroyed during the same Russian attack on the settlement. So this is already the 4th visually documented T-54 loss for Russia since the beginning of just last month. Impressive. Then, somewhere in the east, a Ukrainian drone hit a Russian T-90 tank, resulting in instant rapid combustion, as it appears that driving over an open plains field without any cover was their last mistake. And again, a T-90. Some of the best-in-class stuff for Russia right there. Then, also in the east, several pieces of heavy equipment were destroyed by Ukrainian National Guardsmen, including 3 MTLBs, 3 Mr. B howitzers, these are the towed variants that we see so few of these days, and 1 Ural truck, and all happening on the Avdiivka front, in fact. Then we also happened upon a little bit of footage of the work of a Bradley IFV of the 47th Brigade on the Avdiivka front as well. So these things continue to operate on the western Avdiivka front, that is, immensely survivable and effective creatures that have really proven their worth. Then we'll head all the way west as Russia attacked Odessa with missile strikes just around the same time that President Zelensky and the Greek PM Mitsotakis were visiting the city. So Zelensky showed the Greek PM the port's value and how Ukraine is rebuilding its sea routes after the damage, and the visit ended with sirens and explosions nearby, perhaps acting as a very stark reminder of the ongoing conflict for the Greek PM, something which only serves to likely cause Greece to allocate more aid to Ukraine. And events like these forever remind me of the bunker rat Putin, as he will not go anywhere near the front lines unless it's 3:30 a.m. at Mariupol, like that one time flying under cover of night, but still almost 100 kilometers away from the front lines. Now, the only difference here is if Zelensky met an ill-timed early fate or demise of death, Ukraine would still fight for their freedom. Whereas if Putin somehow met his maker, Russia would be headless, leaderless, and possibly disintegrate into anarchy, and have multiple breakaway republics. So you see, you cannot rest the stability of your nation on just one individual. And that's actually part of Putin's election campaign, if you can call it that, to keep strength and stability. But even if he manages, through all of this, to somehow live another 10, 15, even 20 years, it's actually still a very short-term strategy for a country to rely on. Then to the Black Sea, as we momentarily take a look back at the day that was for March 5th, with the sinking of the Russian patrol ship, the Sergei Kotov, which is a patrol ship by name, but truly a smaller corvette in its role and capabilities, that ultimately sank as a result of Ukrainian naval drones. And this is important not just because of Ukrainian naval drones forcing much of Russia's formidable Black Sea fleet all the way back to the Kerch Strait, which is about 600 to 700 kilometers in range, which was needed for those drones, and not to mention the payload to boot, but because the Sergei Kotov, worth about $70 million US, was completed and launched into the Black Sea around just only 2021. Interestingly, it had been previously targeted by Ukrainian USVs, aka unmanned surface vehicles, back in July and September of last year, and sustaining minor damage and returning to service shortly thereafter. So, given that, I might have thought Russia would be more defensively prepared for these instances. Not to mention, this is the third Russian Black Sea Fleet vessel in the past 5 weeks to go down, as you may also remember the Sokolov and the Kunikov. Then headed across to some news for today. So, the Ukrainian Deputy Minister of Strategic Industries revealed that Ukraine is poised to produce 2 million drones in 2024. But also that the Ukrainian drone manufacturers can already produce up to 150,000 monthly units. Now, the minister also clarified this number of 2 million drones they're expected to produce this year, as previously their estimates only had them on just over 1 million, but they now expect to double that figure by the end of the year. Then in some other news, Ukraine's allies are making strides in securing funding for the Czech-led initiative to purchase the 800,000 artillery shells, as spoken about previously, with the Czech-led effort to provide these hundreds of thousands of artillery shells, so roughly 500,000 155mm and about 300,000 122mm, is already almost fully funded now. And in total, about 1.5 billion euros was needed for this acquisition, which is said to be just mere weeks away now from reaching Ukrainian front lines. Then, in some other news, the EU mulls over a 100 billion euro special defense fund for greater strategic autonomy, as stated by the EU Internal Market Commissioner Breton recently, with also stating, quote, "We must take more responsibility for our own security." And bearing in mind, defense funding of this magnitude would come somewhat parallel, but still somewhat separate to NATO commitments. Then into some other news. So Belgium is ready and raring to allocate some of that frozen Russian asset funds for Ukraine's defense, as they're currently looking to allocate a portion of the 1.7 billion euros profit from frozen Russian assets to Ukraine's defense needs. All as announced by Ukrainian PM Denis Shmyhal during a press conference. Meanwhile, the rest of Europe and the US are looking for their own ways to redistribute frozen Russian assets for use in Ukraine. About 300 billion worth, at least. Then moving to some economy-related news, one of Turkey's mid-sized Mediterranean oil terminals, the Dortyol, will no longer accept Russian imports after receiving record volumes last year. This move comes amid increasing US sanctions pressure on Turkey, who was a major importer of Russian crude and fuel since 2022. Now, Global Terminal Services, or GTS, which operates the terminal, told clients it would not accept any Russian products. GTS also stated that all previous operations complied with sanctions, including the G7's price cap on oil. So every closed-off market counts. Now, Russia has to find some other place to take their oil, and most likely India and China would take it at heavily discounted prices. As such, leaving decent supply volumes on the global stage, on the global market, keeping the price of oil stable. Therefore, the major loser in that series of handshakes and transactions is Russia and its severely reduced oil revenues. Then headed across to another one of those Russian military mobilization blunder segments, guys. So, in a video message, 7 Indians shared that Russian authorities are forcing them to fight in Ukraine. So what happened here was they visited Russia as tourists in late December of 2023. Then a travel agent, quote unquote, took them to Belarus, where he stole their money and just vanished. Then in Belarus, they were detained and then handed over to the Russian forces in a case of what would otherwise be a very bizarre turn of events when involving any other 2 neighboring countries. And then these guys were made to sign untranslated documents. So after 2 weeks of military training, I might quote unquote that one as well, they were sent to the front lines. But also they faced a 10-year prison threat for any refusals. And now they're attempting to seek help from the Indian embassy. And so just like these guys, previous reports indicated that Cuban citizens had faced similar situations after entering Russia with job promises, but were enlisted in the military instead. So this is the utterly shameless and desperate lengths Russia goes to feed its war machine with personnel. But hey, if push comes to shove, at a certain point, all bets will be off for those somewhat protected spaces of St. Petersburg and Moscow and their residents, as Putin would sell out every last one of them and his own mother just to survive this terrible mistake of a botched invasion he got himself and Russia into. Then moving across to a couple of quick lighter segments. So we saw a Ukrainian soldier in his downtime of rest near the frontline positions, playing with his little furry friend. But also we saw another having a bit of a power nap with his feline friend as well. The humanity. The Ukrainian humanity. And I'm still waiting to see something like this from the Russian side, except for that really well-fed dog from Bakhmut from about a year ago. But I don't think it was Russian kindness that caught him that way. Then moving across to a couple of quick funnies to round it all off with today, guys. So, attention Belgium. Putin has made a new geopolitical claim or discovery to add to his weekly updated narratives, as he says that Belgium largely became an independent state on the world map thanks to Russia. Oh, we have so much to thank Putin for. Then to a final funny to round it all off for today, guys. So, and in a truly bizarre event, Vladimir Putin, his spokesman, Dmitry Peskov, today said, "We won't tolerate criticism of our democracy any longer. Our democracy is the best." But also said that, he condemned claims by Russians that say that Russia isn't a democracy and should be. So, tolerating criticism is a key component of democracy. It's actually an oxymoron to say that democracy should not be criticizable. But oh, I think I get it. This is Russian democracy, a very special kind of democracy. But even more than all that, it's just amazing how he can say all that with a straight face. Good on you, Peskov. So that's it for today, guys. Thanks again for watching the video. Please like or smash that like button there. It does go out goes a long way to help out the channel grow and spread the message. So thanks again, and I do hope to see all of you guys there in the next one. Cheers.